Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Logan, and here is my sidekick, Austin. It is time for part 10 of our impromptu history of superhero movies. Last time we finished off 2017, and the last few of these we've been kind of trucking it one whole year for an hour. But our plan right now, and this was kind of Austin's idea, I think he's right about it, is we're going to try to knock this out in two more. And, I said a while back I was hoping it would be one or two more, and I think that was around 6 or 7. But
back in episode 2.
Yeah, our thinking now is this will end off at a clean, 11 with maybe a 12th to talk about the possible future, because we've been kicking around for a while doing kind of an epilogue to this, kind of a speculation cast for just the whole kit and caboodle, Austin, of superhero movies. But we've got 2 years before COVID. And then we thought tonight we would try to tackle, kind of the period right before COVID happens, and then deal with, the aftermath of that, the post-COVID period, up to present day in one more show. And these might be a little bit more glossed over overview, because this is, now this has turned into the impromptu recent history of superhero movies, all things that are much fresher in our minds ostensibly, although not date-wise. It's really easy for me to go back to like the early 2000s and be like, okay, here's all the movies that came out in this year. We get to 4 or 5 years ago, and I don't remember exactly what years what movies come out nearly as well. But these are all things that we've talked about much more recently as they were happening. And reviewing those films in a spoiler cast, and so we have a lot more, material on that stuff. Yep. And it was not history but news just the other day.
Yeah, by next episode, if all things go according to plan, we'll be on things that I was on spoiler cast for.
So. Oh my god, that's true. Because Austin's going in his 4th year on the channel now.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts. And I probably said this last time, but Austin, it's really surreal doing a series on the history of this stuff, and now we're in a period of things that it felt like I just did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Especially for the big 2 movies that we have to talk about today.
Like when we get finished with, assuming we get as far as we want to get today, and there's no assuming that, but I will have moved into the house I'm in now by the end of this video.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
It's pretty
crazy.
Wild. I'm going to go ahead and start the clock. We're going for about an hour on these. Sometimes we cheat and go a little bit over, but we're trying to keep these to about hour blocks. And Austin and I have been really enjoying going through this and talking about the whole of superhero movie history. We have another plan for a lengthy series like this. We're going to start right after this that we're equally excited to get to. And we're not going to announce that until the end, but we're the end of the series. But we're excited to tell you guys about it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll probably be as many parts as this, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. No, I was saying in the last video that I was very nervous about how much prep I still have to do, and then Cap was like, "Well, I haven't done any, so
I haven't done any of that yet."
So I'm still way ahead of Cap in that.
Hey, thanks for tuning in live. Thanks for listening after the fact if you're doing that. Appreciate you guys. If you would like to make your opinion heard, or you want to help correct us on something, or there's information you want to throw at us, we don't do any prep for these. We're going entirely from memory, and we're not doing any research or having anything up in front of us as we're going. So we appreciate your help. If you want to throw any information at us, you can put in a super chat to guarantee that your idea is talked about. But you don't have to do that. You can just leave regular comments, and if you're listening after the fact, you can't interact with us in real time because that's how time works, but we appreciate you just hanging out with us and listening regardless. And now I'm putting an hour on the clock, and Austin, I have a couple of different kind of broad questions I can put you on the spot for.
Okay, I was
going to say,
you always throw a zinger at me right at the beginning.
Yeah, so. I've got a couple for this one. Maybe I'll just do them both real quick. So, first of all, can you think of, because we're in a period of a lot of announced and then very quickly, unceremoniously canceled or thrown under the rug movies. And we haven't talked about a lot of those during this period. We talked about some canceled scripts and almost made movies in the 90s and 2000s. We haven't talked about a ton of that yet, but it seemed like it was happening. And some of this is just age of the internet, right? Like things get leaked. You hear about things that you're maybe not supposed to know about. But this is that period where DC is announcing a Joker or a Harley Quinn movie every couple of days. Yeah, they got their slates, and
even
then
Marvel was guilty of this with Inhumans.
Yeah, but that was one. DC had like 45 of these.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it just kept happening, and I don't want to try to
now because they eventually got some of them out. They eventually got Flash and Shazam out.
Yeah, finally, but they had their slate at the beginning of the DCEU when they thought that it would be popular and that Man of Steel wouldn't have a 29% on Rotten Tomatoes, where you had like Cyborg on that list, and it looked very different, and only about half those movies got made, and not anything like at the times they were supposed to. A lot of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. A lot of them were way later, and with Flash specifically, that when it's first announced, that's like, I guess when it's finished, I should say that's like 8 directors later, like in different visions.
Yeah, and the whole Flashpoint thing with Flash was suggested like years before that movie was even filming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not even how that movie starts.
No, but I think we knew about that like 5 or 6 years before they made it.
Mm-hmm.
No, or at least before it came out. But my question to you, we don't have to rack our brains and try to remember all of the movies that almost happened between DC and Sony and Marvel, et cetera, Fox, because Fox had some rumored things,
Gambit,
or the things that they were kicking around before the buyouts. They had their Doom movie and the supposed Silver Surfer movie, I think.
What's his fit? Multiple Man.
I forgot about that. Yeah, like you said, Gambit, and Gambit was supposed to happen. Toward the end of that, like that wasn't that long ago. They were talking about that.
I want to say it was like before Apocalypse. They were talking about Gambit, and that they had cast Channing Tatum.
But anyway, so my question to you is, can you think of any of those projects that would have really changed the world, turned the tides for superhero movies that might? And obviously, it depends on quality and reception and all of that. But did any of those things from any of those companies have the potential to make waves, and we would be looking at a different landscape now? Like was there a Deadpool in there? Was there
It's hard to say. That's obviously what they wanted out of Multiple Man, because I think that was supposed to be R-rated. And with Gambit, but would it have actually been that? I don't know.
Neither of those sound like big money makers to me, no matter how good they are.
Yeah, like Gambit more so because he's at least one of the big ones that people who grew up with the '90s show were like, "Where's Gambit? Like, why is he not in one of these movies?" And at a certain point, when you couldn't get that movie made, why didn't you just put him in one of the X-Men movies? You had him cast.
Yeah, I mean, he was in Origins, but that didn't, light the world on fire. Mm-hmm. And that movie wasn't well liked.
Well, maybe that could have been the Deadpool then, because that's also where Deadpool gets thrown in first.
Isn't that interesting?
Maybe we could have had a great Blob movie that set the world on fire.
And it should have been called "Did You Just Call Me Blob?"
Oh, of course, yeah.
That'd be great. That's what Sony would have called it. I wonder, and this goes into the other question I was going to ask you, but I wonder how experimental Fox would have allowed any of that stuff to ultimately be, because there was those 5 minutes where some of us got really excited about New Mutants, and it's hard to remember a time where anybody cared about that movie and it looked really cool, but the idea that they would allow an honest-to-God horror movie in that universe, like set in the same continuity of X-Men, and they would maybe let those movies be different genres and things, was kind of exciting for a minute. And around that same time, it looked like Fantastic could have been something kind of special, or Fantastic, excuse me. Might have been something special, and we all know how that turned out. So it's hard to say if any of that stuff would have actually been as experimental and different and interesting as people felt like Logan was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just hard to say. Who knows? I don't know if there's scripts available online for any of those. Like, obviously, you have it with some things. There's a silver and black script online.
Well, some of those things I don't think ever got to the scripting stage.
But something like Gambit, I would have to imagine did,
because it was around forever. Yeah,
exactly. Something like Multiple Man. I feel like that could go either way. Like, I feel like that was kind of announced.
It is weird there hasn't been more buzz about a Miracle Man movie, though. You think by now there'd be talk about that at DC. I bet that's something Gunn does, at least as an Elseworlds thing at some point.
Oh, sure. I'm sure he'll crack into all that Fourth World stuff.
That's an aside. Robert says X-Force was the other big movie Fox was developing, and I imagine that probably got to the scripting stage, too.
Well, that's the big thing is because that was going to be done by what's his face, Drew Goddard, who was supposed to do the Sinister Six movie. Because Drew Goddard is cursed. If you put him on a team movie, that movie does not happen.
Well, I think that's because he's a decent writer and filmmaker, and he might do a good job, and we can't have that.
Well, who knows with X-Force? Like, that's probably be just the buyout. But
and that was my other question, and these are very related things. So I'll ask them both. If the Fox buyout doesn't happen, what do things look like now? Like, obviously, it massively changes MCU trajectory, and it's hard to say if it's for the better or the worse. Because if MCU doesn't have X-Men or Fantastic Four, and they make a lot of the same mistakes they've made so far, they don't have anything to fall back on when consumer confidence isn't there and the whole thing blows up. But we haven't seen if those things will save them yet, so who knows? That's conversation for down the line.
Well, X-Men was fizzling out so hard that it's... Who knows? Like, they needed something. Like, would they have rebooted? I don't know.
The things they were talking about, if any of it actually came to fruition, they could have had a kind of reset in a new experimental period where they did what DC has kind of been doing with movies like Joker, where they just tried stuff that were kind of more standalone things, and then eventually maybe a soft reboot would have come out of that, or they just wouldn't have cared about continuity. If they, if Vaughn had been able to write his Doom script and those sorts of things, like if they let some of the people that were talking about making movies, and I forget who all it was, but they sounded like the right people for some of those projects. There could have been a new golden age for Fox, but it would have taken 5 or 6 years before we really saw it all come together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because just what we have, like, it was nothing. They were fizzling out really hard.
And it's important to note that we start getting word of that around the time that we're talking tonight. I want to say the buyout fully comes together. What is it, 19, or is it not until COVID's already?
No, it's either the beginning or the end of 18.
Oh, is it that early?
Yes, because there was already talks of I think it's the end of 18, because there was talks that Endgame will be how we bring in the X-Men. I remember I remember reading a plot leak that said the after credit scene of that movie would be Captain America's grave after he dies in battle, and you see a wheelchair roll up, and they leave flowers at his grave, and it was like, oh man, it's Professor X. It's like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, that'd be so stupid.
And yeah, with some of the things we've done at this point, I don't know that it looks much stupider than some Disney Plus stuff, but...
Yeah, for sure.
No,
well, the best part is that the wheelchair would roll up and would go, judging by what they've done.
That's what we've done now. Yeah. No, see, that was clearly intentionally setting up X-Men 97. You just don't understand. They've had a plan this whole time. Okay.
No, exactly.
I should have remembered that the buyout went through well before lockdown, because I think the first official... Tell me if I'm wrong about this. And we're getting ahead of ourselves now, but I think the first official connection or nod wink to the Fox buyout is the Quicksilver thing in WandaVision. I think that's the first thing that happens.
It is, yeah.
Which at the time seemed really clever and cool, and I wish they'd done a little bit more with it, but...
I remember it like set the fandom on fire, not in like a bad way, but in like everyone was like, "Oh man, like what's going on?"
People got their hopes up for it too, because everybody thought that it would be, those universes blending, and I really didn't think it would. I thought it was just kind of stunt casting, and that's ultimately what it is. But then, retroactively, we've been doing so much multiverse stuff that I don't know why they didn't do that.
Well, I think it came in too early. Like they didn't know that that's the route they were going.
Yeah, maybe so. Because that's pre any actual discussion of multiverse. Because you got to get.
They're still working on Endgame when they start writing.
Yeah, that's right.
So it was probably just way too early.
But anyway, well, that was where I wanted to start things.
Yeah.
I also want to mention that this is around the period where we get that scare for a minute, or I don't know, looking back on how things have gone, maybe to some people this isn't a scare. Maybe this would have been a good thing for some of us. But this is also around the same time that we had that scare that Sony and Marvel wouldn't be able to continue to work together and keep Spider-Man in the MCU.
You like jumped us to 2020. We're slowly rolling backwards. Yeah, that's after 2019. Yeah. In the summer. That's, I want to say No Way Home. Far From Home still in the theater when that happens.
I knew it was in the ballpark of this. I knew it was somewhere in 1819, so that's why I brought it up.
Oh yeah, it's 19 because it's after Far From Home. Because everyone was like, you can't just end like that, and then pack your bags and go home.
Robert in the comments says, remember when everyone laughed about Silver and Black being in development? Now we're in a world where Morbius and Madam Web have movies. Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of the stuff they put out now is not any crazier than stuff that they mothballed.
No. Well, I'm sure some of Madam Web loosely comes from Silver and Black because the script of that movie ends with the two of them putting together their all-female team. And I want to say at least one or two of the girls in that movie are in that team. But
okay.
There's a really goofy end scene where Silver Sable's like hands somebody a tablet or whatever, and she's like, "Look at these people. Notice anything about all of them? Yeah, they're all women."
See, I didn't know you meant anything specifically like plot wise or anything. I thought you just meant in that it was a female team up movie, and that they were like, well, we're not going to make the Silver and Black thing, but we'll do Madam Web, so we have one of those.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, like kind of loosely. Like I think that's the route they were always trying to get to.
So let me set the stage for this, and then we'll start throwing out movies and talk about what actually happened in these years and where we went. You've got a period now that's kind of, in my mind, like a boom bust kind of period where Marvel is proving that there's still plenty of interest in these kinds of movies and that you can get an audience invested enough where they feel like they have to see everything, which ends up being kind of their, if not doom, maybe arguably close to it right now, where they've really lost consumer confidence and people are not going out in droves for their stuff like they used to. But during this period, you've got, after Infinity War, which is massive, you've in breaking records, you've got Captain Marvel, which I'm convinced would not have made $1 billion if it didn't happen exactly where it happens. And so we're, just after Infinity War, had to see this movie, you had to see her backstory. And at the same time...
Yeah, you're not going to understand Endgame unless you see that. And a lot of people, because we knew that they were doing time travel, went, okay, we're bringing Captain Marvel, who you're saying is going to be important, and it's a period piece, and you're setting up time travel. Connect the dots.
Oh, yeah.
So I think a lot of people had that mentality going into
I've never had that thought before.
Mm-hmm. No, I remember like a ton of theories that Ant-Man would show up in that movie, and it would be like he pops out of time, like from the ending of Ant-Man and the Wasp.
So they thought that it would be simultaneously an origin for that character, but also like time is being paved over, and it's a prequel that also is a sequel?
Like it would tie into Endgame a lot more. I think a lot of people had that mentality.
That would have been
part of why it did so well.
A little more creative than what they did. Whether you want that or not, that might have been a better movie. Anyway, at the same time, DC is proving that just because you put out movies based on really popular characters that have been successful in the past doesn't mean people will see them if word of mouth is really bad. And so the DCEU is having the entire opposite experience during this period that the MCU is having, where they've had a couple of massive duds for really big properties. So BVS like made money at the box office, not as much as they wanted it to, but was critically, massively lampooned. And then Justice League was a huge failure. And now they're groping around trying to figure out if they even want to continue this continuity. They're very loose with their continuity. They put out Wonder Woman. We talked about that last time in 2017, and that did really well. But still, every time they put out a movie, it feels like it's kind of a product of another time, and they don't have a direction now.
Mm-hmm. The ship around. Quality aside, like whether you like them or not, but because then you have Aquaman make $1 billion.
That's true.
And Shazam,
but you always have to put that asterisk in because of China.
Because of China.
When you have a movie that makes $1 billion, but the toys aren't moving, something is amiss.
Sure. But then you also have Shazam, which didn't light the world on fire at the box office.
But people liked it.
Like, just okay, but people liked it.
And people were saying if they just go more in this direction, don't take themselves too seriously, just make superhero movies that are superhero movies, they can right the ship. Mm-hmm. And you know what? That was true. And like when I've gone back to Shazam now, because like a lot of people, I watched it and liked it fine, but I didn't think to really go back to it. And I watched it right before the sequel, and I was like, I don't know, this is not great on a second viewing. Like, it's fine, but I didn't like it even as well as I did the first place. I think a lot of people felt that way. Even with that, if they had made 5 more of those, they would have been okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's like the peak period of the genre hit so high that people were a lot more lenient on things that were kind of just not great.
That's right.
Like, people were pretty lenient on Ant-Man 2. People were more mixed on Captain Marvel, but I would say like pretty lenient on it.
Look, I'm convinced that Wonder Woman doesn't do as well as it does if it doesn't come out after the insanity that was BVS and Justice League. And I put myself in that crowd because I like that movie, but I think I and a lot of people liked it even a lot more than we would have because it was competent and it made sense and we knew what was happening. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't what we had just been subjected to before that. Everything is relative.
Yeah, but you have movies like Ant-Man, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, Aquaman, Shazam, that people walked out of going, oh, like it was pretty good, or like okay, or really good in the case of Aquaman. And then they all had sequels that then completely underperformed and nobody liked, despite being not too far off from what those first ones were, which really shows you how far the genre fell off in that time period.
So, a lot of movies come out in 2018.
Yeah, well, we should probably start with
it is
the first of 2018, which is Black Panther.
That is a saturated year, and is it the most saturated year in the 2010s, or have we already kind of had that?
I think we've already had that, because in 2018 you have Black Panther, Infinity War, Ant-Man, Aquaman,
Venom,
Deadpool, I forgot about Venom.
Deadpool 2.
Okay, no, that's 2019.
Deadpool 2 isn't until 19?
Yeah, because it's around Endgame.
I'm just going to double check you on that.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
No, that's 18.
Okay, never mind. No, because it's Shazam that's near Endgame.
Yeah,
my bad.
Remember, they kind of rushed that, and that's part of what bothered me about it, because I was pretty critical of that movie, and I felt like it needed a little bit more time to bake. That the first one's 16, and then they rushed it for 2 years after that.
Mm-hmm. No, that is true. But yeah, we start with Black Panther, which of course sets the world on fire and starts that like big chain where you have that, and then Infinity War is even bigger, and then Endgame's even bigger.
And Black Panther was so popular that it is still in the theater when Infinity War comes out. Mm-hmm. And it was very surreal to have those two movies like next to each other in a movie theater where you could go see one that had T'Challa in it, and then go next door and see another movie with the same character.
Mm-hmm. No, and then you have that with Captain Marvel and Endgame, but they released them a lot closer together.
Oh, that's true. So it's not as impressive.
Yeah, so it's exactly.
And also, you could watch most of Endgame before you get to that character.
Mm-hmm. But both of those movies, when Avengers came out, you saw a bump in sales.
Well, that's not true. I guess she's there at the beginning. I always think of it as like she shows up as the Deus Ex Machina, and that's the only scene she's in. I guess she's there at the beginning.
Well, she's kind of a Deus Ex Machina twice, because she shows up because they're like, how do we get Tony out of space?
Oh, that's true.
Captain Marvel shows up. Okay, she's gone.
That's all she's for, and she's so popular we have to just keep getting rid of her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what she is? She's Cyclops from the X-Men movies, except we tout her up as important.
She's Professor X. Yeah, we have to keep writing her out. I guess more so Cyclops because she doesn't get anything to do.
Yeah, and the way she's not like either of those characters is we also don't have to like keep incapacitating her to do it. We just say, she's got a mission. She's got something else to go do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she just leaves. Yeah, exactly. You get that moment where Rocket's like, we're working on this, and she's like, I got other things to do. I'm like, how dare you?
Yeah, Robert says 16 had a lot. I think 16 and 18 are probably vying for most saturated.
16, 17, and 18 probably the Holy Trinity.
Yep. And then 19's not quite as many, and then after that we start to really fall off, of course.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, then you get. I would say the big thing with Black Panther is the Aquaman is not what that movie is. I think without Black Panther, like that is the biggest immediate thing that we see with that.
Interesting. What do you mean? Just that there's a high.
I just think that
superhero movies, and so people go see that.
Kind of similar movies and just how they're made, like where you have like the kind of king character, and we take kind of everything that you know about them and we shove it into one movie. Now, whether that works or not for you, like that is what both of them are doing. Like, where you have Aquaman, where it feels like John's entire run shoved into one movie, and then with Black Panther, you have all three of his main villains. Shoved into one story as well.
No, that's absolutely true. But when you say like that movie wouldn't be the same, you mean like people seeing it?
No, I think they were looking at that movie personally. Like I think they're just kind of similar movies, and they're both, of course, about the like battle for the throne thing. And maybe you naturally could have gotten there because that is a big part of Aquaman as well. But like. I think there's just kind of too many similarities in those movies for me to not see some inspiration.
But it's weird because they come out the same year.
No. Oh wait, I'm thinking Aquaman's 19. Okay.
No, Aquaman's 18. Like they both come out the same year.
That's just unintentional.
So I'm just wondering how one like inspires the other.
This is my bad then because I'm thinking Aquaman's a year later.
Okay. I mean, even if it was, they'd still be in production around the same time.
Yeah. But I mean, so many of these movies are made on set.
No, that's true. No, I always saw that as kind of because I noticed some of those parallels as well. I always thought a lot of that was coincidental, and it was kind of odd that they both happened to finally get to their regal, their regal characters in a like cordoned off secret city at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're right then. Yeah, I'm mixing up my years, but and they're also very very different movies in terms of quality. But
yes, they are. Well, and even though Black Panther has a pretty big cast of characters, it doesn't feel kitchen sink like Aquaman does.
I do have some of that with Black Panther. Yeah.
But I don't think it's as much that way.
It's nowhere near as bad as Aquaman. But there's things that I'm like, I wish you cut some of this so you could focus on some of the things that maybe aren't working as well.
That's totally fair. And you're more critical of that movie than I am. Like,
yeah, and I don't dislike that movie. A lot of people go like, you hate Black Panther.
Oh no, I know you don't. But
it's just disappointing for me.
But some of the issues you have with it just have never bothered me at all. So I have to be reminded of what you think doesn't work about it, because some of that, like, I don't see that as a kitchen sink movie. Mm-hmm. I should say I don't see it as bloated. It's big. I mean, there's certainly a lot going on. Mm-hmm. But it's never occurred to me that it had too large of a cast, or that they were trying to adapt too much at once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely. The main thing is I wouldn't have shoved in all three of his major villains. I think they get like really shortchanged, and I don't think any of them get the development that I wish they had.
And then I
I know
think that's
that's like
both.
heresy because people love Killmonger, but
And I
I
think
think it's a
that's
crime that he gets introduced an hour in.
well, and with Killmonger, part of that is because MCU up to that point had such a bad track record for villains. Again, everything is so relative. So when we're coming off of the highs and lows of Marvel Netflix, I feel like for people that are really invested in this stuff, Marvel Netflix is actually part of this, where
Well, that was the big
you
thing people
don't
talked about. Yeah.
you don't have. See, I didn't remember this conversation. I had this thought, but I didn't know if anybody else did. You just didn't have a lot of really violent, scary bad guys to the level that you had them in Marvel Netflix, and really tortured kind of characters like that. A lot of their villains seemed too stock, and Killmonger felt a little bit more toward a Marvel Netflix villain for me.
Mm-hmm.
And
And I think
that's one of the reasons I really appreciated that.
for me, the reason I didn't have that is because I was like, but we were already getting out of that. Like, we just had Zemo, who I really like. The villain in Doctor Strange is like whatever, but like I really like
Yeah.
Dormammu.
Oh, me too.
We just had Ego and Vulture, who are like in my top 5 MCU villains. So like I didn't really have I was like we're already building out of these
Well,
villains.
remind me when Homecoming is. Is that 17? Have
It's
we already talked
17.
about that? Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
So like some of the stuff like
You're absolutely right, but that reputation is still there, and some
it is
people.
still there.
So like, yeah, there's 2 or 3 decent ones, and they're in rapid succession. So that should affect people's feelings about it. But we're all still just going back to like, what were you doing with Thor 2?
Malekith.
And yeah, with Malekith, and people thought Ronan was lame, despite how you and I might feel about that. And
Yeah, and I mean Ronan's like whatever, like he's nowhere near one of their better villains.
no, I think he works really well thematically in that movie,
Yeah,
so it's hard for me not
he's
to give it a
fine.
pass. But I didn't like him until I wrote about it, so that's
Like, he's
whatever.
always been one of those villains that's like it's just fine.
As an entertainment, he's kind of nothing.
Yeah, Gunn. I think Gunn really improved on that after that because every villain he's done since has been really great.
I was never on anything like a high with Zemo, like a lot of people were. To this day, I don't understand people's fascination with that character. And I felt like he was like I get his ideology and stuff, but it's that's one of those things that's on paper in a way that I don't think it's real effective in the story.
For sure.
And I feel like he's too much of a plot device to give us a reason for the Civil War to happen. And I felt like that could have happened just fine without a conspiracy. I didn't need that, and so I've never
Absolutely
appreciated
fair.
that character like other people do. And I just want to get that out there because I'm the only person on the planet that feels that way.
I loved Zemo until he came back.
Well, yeah, but
I hate Zemo.
yeah, but like everything after that is a mulligan. It's
Yeah.
it's pretty easy at this point to headcanon away the TV stuff that isn't working for you.
For
Until
sure.
they make it important later in things you like. When that happens, you'll have to reconcile it. But anyway, we're all over the place. I was going to say, the thing you're talking about with Black Panther, which I respectfully disagree with, but I understand,
Yeah.
I think is both the best and worst thing about Aquaman. Like shoving everything in the way they did, as insanely over the top and crazy as that is, I find that on some level really fun, but like not what I wanted for an Aquaman movie, and there was nowhere to go from there. And after you see Aquaman 2, there really was nowhere to go from there.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like everything I can complain about with that movie is what made it kind of fun. You know, with like, you did all of his villains and you already did the trench and all of that. And I was, yeah, but it was kind of fun that they did everything.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, then we have the 2 big ones that are the thumbnail. We get Infinity War and Endgame, the big ending.
Yeah, in 18 and 19 respectively, of course. And
exactly.
they initially were supposed to have the same title, which I think should kind of throw away any argument about whether or not they should be considered a part 1 and a part 2. And I think it's kind of odd that the Russos went on record after the Endgame title was announced and made a big deal out of, no, they're 2 totally different movies. And I'm like, yeah, sort of, but like, one is the resolution of a big cliffhanger, kind of second act plot point.
Yeah, it's very,
They
in
have
my
different
eyes.
tones. They're telling different stories, but they are effectively a part one and a part two. Like I think there is no argument there. In a way, there is an argument for and against. Is Civil War a Captain America movie? There's no argument here. It's a part one and a part two.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the way that they looked at it was that it's part one and part two in the same way that like Empire and Return of the Jedi are a part one, part two, and like Pirates 2 and 3, where it's like it is like a part one, part two, but we're doing like different things, like they're not the exact same. So I think that was their argument. But it was definitely not supposed to be Endgame in the first place. I've always bought into it was supposed after they changed part one, part two, it was supposed to be Infinity Gauntlet. That was the second movie, and then they changed it last minute.
Yeah, well, they said in the first place it was just going to be called Part One, Part Two. Both of them would have the Infinity War title.
Yeah, but then they took away the part two title, and it had no title for a while.
Yeah.
And then when they finally revealed it, it was like Endgame. It was like, oh.
That never made sense to me, so you're probably right. If not Infinity Gauntlet, something else.
Well, the big thing is
because
that,
why would you withhold it for so long? Because Endgame is no kind of reveal.
Well, the big thing is
because they acted like they couldn't tell us, or it would give something away. That's what they acted like.
There was that big interview with what's her face, Zoe Saldana, where she was like, "I just finished we just wrapped on Infinity War, and now we're filming Infinity Gauntlet," and I was like, "Oh, so that's obviously what the title's going to be." And I've just kind of like always held on to that. Like maybe she misspoke, but I don't know.
Yeah,
the big end of that movie is we all like everyone's got to get their hand on the Infinity Gauntlet.
Okay. Yeah.
I would be shocked if that weren't at least considered at some point.
Yeah,
it's literally a movie about building the Infinity Gauntlet in a way that obviously Infinity War is too, but it's also different because it's like the villain's perspective. Like it's our heroes have to build their own Infinity Gauntlet in retaliation. I don't know.
What was always frustrating about those movies to me is Infinity War felt like getting certain things back on track that I was starting to get leery of and unsure about, particularly Thor. And then you get into Endgame and we're kind of right back to Ragnarok, and I'm very confused about the direction of the trajectory for everything. It was like we're sobering up with Infinity War, and we're kind of acting like adults again. And yeah, there's comedy in that movie, and it's a comic book movie, and there's some leaps in logic that are really strange that everybody's made fun of ad nauseum. Like, why can't you just cut Thanos' arm off, et cetera, et cetera. And then you get to Endgame, and in this way they are really two different movies. It starts to really divide the fan base. And I think in some ways is kind of the beginning of the end for them, where a lot of the stuff that people like at large are complaining about now maybe arguably kind of started in Endgame.
Yeah, and
especially the being too self-referential thing. And like patting yourself on the back too much, and being too much about your own history, and being, kind of sappy and teary-eyed about the things that you've made.
And with Thor specifically in that movie, I've always said it works on paper. It's that they went comedy-wise, like in terms of execution.
Absolutely.
Like Thor being like...
the tone is wrong.
Thor being like overweight and like a drunk after being depressed that he failed to kill Thanos, and then the snap happens. I think that's fine on paper. It's just that in practice, that's not exactly what they did with it.
Well, if memory serves, at the beginning of Jason Aaron's run, where he, introduces Gore the God Butcher, which they butchered in, at least, story-wise. I mean, they had the right actor, in Love and Thunder. But anyway, if memory serves, with that story, when you had the different timelines converging with different versions of Thor, you had the future Thor who was no longer worthy and had grown out a long beard. And I don't think he was like fat, but he'd let himself go. And And I wonder if that's what they were looking at with that.
The unworthy Thor, probably.
Yeah.
Well, I've always thought it was weird.
But my point is, that was very dramatic and tragic and sad, and that's the tone that they should have gone with. I've always agreed with you on this.
Well, I've always found it strange that Thor is the one that gets to do the demon in a bottle thing in Endgame.
Oh,
I
sure.
thought that was strange too.
You're so hung up on the alcohol thing. I never thought about that.
There's so many places you could fit it in.
Sure. But also, just if he can do it, why couldn't have Iron Man, earlier?
Yeah, well, because there's
at the
a lot
very
of people
least
that say you just can't do it. There's no way they would go that way. And if they did it with Iron Man, it would not be a joke. It would not be like, haha, look at you, Tony.
Let me read this super chat real quick. Tobin Bell Pons, $10 super chat. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. He says, Phase 3 was so good and such a cultural high, it's no wonder we got burned out after it. Sometimes I wonder if audiences would still care about MCU even if Phase 4 was mostly great. I am a broken record on this, and I said this before Far From Home came out, and exactly no one was with me on it. And I don't mean to say I told you so, but I kind of told you so. When that, just before that movie came out, I said they really should have taken a year off. You have a movie that is the culmination of everything and is like a love letter to your whole history, like over a decade of movies. And you're kind of, again, patting yourself on the back too much, but it's really successful, and overall people are really liking it. You're really risking burnout and people not caring if you turn around and go, okay, business as usual, come see our next movie a few months later.
I mean, you did get a year off, though. You can get Far From Home, but it's almost different because it's like a weird Sony deal thing.
No, that's true, but you wouldn't have gotten a year off if it hadn't been for the lockdowns and stuff.
Mm-hmm. But like, you still had it.
No, that's absolutely true. But that should have been their strategy, and the fact that it wasn't still matters, because then their strategy was throw out a bazillion things and don't have any quality control, and that was what I was worried about, and I was right about it.
Well, and that, I think,
that's what I'm
comes
talking
down
about.
To 2019 is the year that Iger was definitely like, okay, I'm leaving. Like, we're doing the Endgame thing, we're doing the last Star Wars episode, and then boom, I'm dropping the mic, I'm leaving. And then he hands it off to the next CEO, who was very like Disney Plus, and he's the one that goes, okay, both Lucasfilm and Marvel, I need 10 shows from you announced like now. It's like there you have all that too. Like, it's a whole other thing that's not entirely on Marvel, but they definitely didn't weather it well.
No, that's true. But I've always thought that the strategy that would have made the most sense is, and like, it's a risk, but it's more in line with what you kind of said with Endgame, where you're like, this is the end of an era. Okay, then have some space after it. Now, if you've got to put out Far From Home, which is kind of an epilogue, fine, but I wouldn't have done anything else right after that. I would have taken some time, made people really miss it, and you have to be really careful about the next thing you put out, and it has to be really good. But I think that's smarter than, oversaturating it. And even without all the Disney Plus MCU shows, it still could have been a mistake to continue at the pace of 3 movies a year.
I would have slowed down. I don't know if we needed fully fully shut down. My main thing is, we should have paced back a little bit.
Yeah.
Because how many of us were like super excited when WandaVision came out? Like, if that's what they followed up with, and then you had like a really good Black Panther sequel, let's say. Obviously, this isn't exactly what would have happened, but like, if you could have had like a Guardians 3, then they'd be fine.
Well, another strategy you could have gone with is just don't have any really important event type things and make it all a lot smaller for a while. Like WandaVision. But the problem is communication. Because they still, and maybe I get why they feel like they have to do this, but I don't agree with it. And I realized that this happened during lockdown, and so we didn't really see what the advertising would have been like going to theater. They would have still treated Black Widow like an event film, and it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
making
and
Black
that
Widow
was a mistake
generally
anyway.
big.
That was wrong time, wrong place, and they should have made that movie 3 years earlier or 5 years earlier. But anyway, I'm sorry, what were you saying? No, I disagree. I think it has to be a completely different movie, and it has to not be a period piece. But I think the smartest time to make Black Widow would have been like, and I'm saying this retroactively, of course, but would have been a couple of years after Avengers when all of those characters had become very A-list and popular in their own right. And
I'm just
before
a Black Widow
DC
hater, so.
And before DC had a chance to get their Wonder Woman movie out. I still say that the fact that Marvel didn't get a good female-led superhero movie out before anybody else is freaking preposterous. Everybody will go to anything you make. They trust you implicitly after Guardians, and you didn't put out a... Hell, make a Gamora movie. People would go see anything right then, and you didn't get... You've never had... I've said this before. You've never had a good... Anybody. A good tentpole blockbuster female-led superhero movie, and MCU doesn't get ahead of that. I mean, that's insane.
Well, it's Perlmutter. That's the reason why Black Panther comes so late, too.
Yeah.
Because he was like, nah, we're not doing that stuff.
No, and I'm well aware of who's at fault there, but I can still yell about it. It makes me angry.
Yeah, for sure.
But that guy should have, even that guy should have understood the marketing potential of that.
No, he didn't.
But but I'm sure, and you know, Toy Guy and all that. I'm sure what he was seeing was, well, all the other female superhero movies that have come out haven't done well. Yeah, because they all sucked.
Mm-hmm. Well, and with Black Panther specifically, like, what did you have to look at? Like, Blade? That did really well.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, there you got no excuse. But with the female
Black
superhero
movie
thing,
even steals the ending of Blade 2. Come on now.
Well, anyway, but yeah, what else do you want to say about Infinity War and Endgame? I mean, like, you know, its success is obvious. The kind of cultural moment is obvious.
Everyone will remember the snap.
Yeah, and that will continue to be in the lingo and the zeitgeist for a long time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people use that for euphemisms for things all the time now. And it was a little bit frustrating for me because I felt like, I don't know, I was like a prudish comic book guy. I couldn't help it, where I was like, the big thing I was sure that movie would do with eliminating half of the world, which is a like first act plot point in Infinity Gauntlet, was the big cliffhanger. And I was just kind of waiting for that movie to finally get there. Mm-hmm. And then it gets there at the end as the big... And I knew what was going to happen as I was watching it. I was like, but I mean, everybody's minds are going to be blown by this, and I spent the whole movie waiting for it to happen. It was just a weird experience for me.
But when you're doing Infinity Gauntlet, or like, obviously it's not exactly that book, but when you're doing that thing as a two-parter, that's the end of your first part. Like, that is the natural ending. It's crazier that wasn't originally the ending of that movie. That was supposed to be the beginning of Endgame. Like, but the fact that was supposed to be is weirder.
And I don't mean to split hairs about it, but in, first time out, those movies being in two parts, it never occurred to me that the whole thing was just Infinity Gauntlet. Like, I didn't even... I thought the second part was gonna either go its own way or be based more on, like, sequels to Infinity Gauntlet. I wasn't expecting two movies breaking that story apart, because I didn't, and I had every reason to think this, Austin. I didn't that first movie was gonna be Thanos going around to get the stones, because he was gonna do it himself already, and then he didn't do that. And so, like, I thought he was gonna have him at the beginning of the movie.
I mean, that's how they sold it. They sold it on Thanos is going around getting the stones.
I don't even remember anyway. It's been a few
years.
And
most of our characters have the stones, like of the different ones. Like Doctor Strange has one, Vision has one.
Well, no, that's true. But I just didn't think it was going to take him that long to collect them.
Mm-hmm. No, I just think, like, if you're going to have a cliffhanger, that's your cliffhanger. Like, it's right there. Like, what else would your cliffhanger be?
Yeah, okay, so I'm dumb. I don't know.
No, I'm
But
just saying. Like, I don't know. I don't think
that
it
happened
like,
so early in that book.
yeah.
I really didn't think that they were going to make us wait that long for it.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, they've just never really fully adapted anything straight. Like,
Well, no, that's true, of course.
mhm. That's just not how they
But
roll.
what I'm saying, that's not the craziest thing that happens in that book.
Hmm.
And
I get that, but I'm
and
just
then they
saying,
blow
like,
the
from a
whole
general
universe's
audience
mind with it,
perspective.
and I'm like, okay.
I don't know. I'm agreeing with what you said at the start that it's comic book prudishness.
Yeah, but I just couldn't help but feel that way about it.
Yeah, fair enough. Um,
Because I was a fan of that book for 20 years, and then, it becomes this, like, big cultural thing, but people don't get all the cool stuff that's in that book. Like, they just get that.
mhm.
And that was
That-
frustrating to me about it at the time.
yeah, that's so many things. The fact that people know what the Thanos snap is, I think, is worth it.
I guess. Yeah, I've never appreciated all of that as much because I won't get into this now because we've got 15 minutes and I've talked about this ad nauseum, but like I never liked their take on Thanos in the first place.
Hmm. But and he's very different. But like I said, that's just kind of everything that they do. I
He's
don't know. Like
different,
it's.
but they won me over on other things that were quite different, and he never added up to me.
Hmm.
And that is a hill I will die on. That's never made sense to me.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think the Thanos is fine, but
Now I know you do. You're wrong, but that's fine. He's not. He doesn't make
okay,
sense. But
okay, chill pill, relax. Yeah. No, and then after we get Endgame, we get
But
to
I mean, if you get to say Wonder Woman sucks every time I say I like that movie, I get to say Thanos doesn't make sense.
but I'm not turning red when I'm doing it. Uh, no, but I don't know. I think it's fine. We'll get there one day when we do the rewind on Infinity War and Endgame. But yeah. Um, what else? Yeah. So after Infinity War and Endgame, we also have the next big like finale thing with Dark Phoenix in 2019.
That nobody cared about.
No, and they tried really hard to make it a big
And
thing.
that was dead on arrival before it was made. And you could tell. And they should have scrapped that before they started. They should have seen the writing on the wall with that after Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember the numbers on Apocalypse. I don't know how that actually performed at the box office, but like it wasn't well liked.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it did like any money at the box office. I remember watching it at home, and at the time I was like, "This is so boring. Like, I can barely make it through this."
Are you talking about Apocalypse or?
It's Dark Phoenix. Sorry.
But what I was saying is I can't remember how well Apocalypse did, so I'm not sure why
I think it
they.
underperformed what they thought it was because I think they wanted that to be like their big Avengers movie, but like it did fine, but like not as big as they thought it would be.
But what happened with Dark Phoenix was so predictable, and I don't understand why they didn't predict it. Like they should have known that Kinberg could not turn that into a success, and certainly not perform any better than Apocalypse did.
I guess they went, okay, Dark Phoenix is like the big story, like everybody
Yeah,
knows
and
this,
which
like,
you've adapted before. It's so bizarre.
but
Everything
that's
about
part
it is
of it.
bizarre.
They're like, okay, like even people who watch the movies, they know what this is, and it had a reputation of doing it badly last time. So if we do it really well this time, then like you know. But they also gave it to the same guy who did it.
Yeah, they give it to the same guy. He made a lot of the same mistakes. We weirdly watches like a remake of that movie in some ways.
Yeah, like it's way worse than X-Men 3. Like for X-Men 3, for all its faults, I can sit down and like be somewhat entertained by it. Like it's a movie. Dark Phoenix, I don't even have that. Like that is one of the most boring things I've ever sat through.
Yeah, and it's always weird when you have the experience that it's both boring and too short. I don't know how that's even possible, but
Yeah,
that's what
I
that
definitely have
has.
that. Well, and that also has that funny thing because we talked about the buyout. Where they reshot the ending of that movie, and it went from being aliens attacking the UN to the X-Men get taken away by a tactical group called the MCU.
Yeah, I know.
Big fight on a train. Okay.
Yeah, and at the time it was like, is that some kind of like meta real world commentary, or are you unself-aware enough to not even know what you did with that acronym? Like,
no, it's got to be intentional. There's no way it's not. They're literally taking the X-Men away at the end.
but I don't know if I trust Kinberg to even be that clever.
I mean, I don't either, which is why, because I also don't think it's clever in any way. Like, it's so on the nose.
Yeah, no,
I'm like,
me too. But that's how little regard I have for that guy.
Fair enough. We need to get Kinberg and Scott Buck together to make a Sony movie.
Yeah, literally everything about that movie is counterintuitive, and I don't know why they thought it would sell. Mm-hmm. You know, like even Fantastic starts from a place where you can see why there was potential, maybe.
Sure, there's at least like a creative spark or idea at the base.
Yeah, and at the very least, you hired a guy with a track record.
Well, and that's the other thing, Cap, is that Kinberg did all the reshoots for Fantastic. Like, at what point is Fox gonna stop?
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is a guy failing upward, and there's something going on we don't know about. There is an element to that we'll never understand.
Mm-hmm. No, he's got blackmail on somebody at Fox.
Yeah, that is a Kurtzman situation.
Mm-hmm. There's no other way.
No, it's nuts. And then that movie releases without X-Men in the title, which is even more baffling.
Because it's like, I've always seen is Disney gets it and they go, oh man, this is going to really hurt our brand. Take X-Men off of it.
Yeah, you know what? You might be right about that, because I forgot that released after the buyout. I could also see that being a thing they would do, thinking that it looks, you know, exciting and edgy or something, or not edgy, but like, you know, it's a smarter, it's a more important movie. We don't even need X-Men in the title because everyone understands what Dark Phoenix is, you know, where they think they're being Dark Knight or Man of Steel or something.
Yeah, exactly. I guess while we're here, we might as well also knock out New Mutants, which is a movie that exists.
And started an odd trend, and some of this is just because of, you know, COVID lockdowns, but that started an odd trend of movies that get shot and then don't get edited and released until the kids that were going to high school while it was being filmed are now graduating from high school. And there are a number of those now, and that's the first big one that everybody made fun of, where it's like they couldn't even do reshoots because all the actors were too old.
Yeah, and that's a really flawed movie. I don't hate that movie. Like, I think you maybe could have made it okay in reshoots.
I agree. I think so too.
Yeah, the way it is just not great. Like, it's indifference before anything else.
It's kind of bland.
Yeah, exactly. I thought the bear thing was kind of cool. Like, that was one of the main things that. We also skipped over Joker.
Yeah.
Thanks, James Egan. I completely forgot about that.
We talked about this a little bit last time when we were talking about Logan, but like the one big kind of, you know, influence that Logan had on the industry was just, maybe you can put out cheaper, unrelated movies to other things that are kind of like art housey relatively, and people will go see them. And DC, I don't know how much they were looking at Logan, but they were looking at franchise movies in a continuity that nobody was caring about, in a continuity that they couldn't keep straight, and they went, well, maybe if we throw a little bit of money at something that's unrelated, that's kind of an Elseworlds kind of thing, people will go see that. And then of course that worked and was massive. As derivative as it was, people, the mass audience did not care that movie just took two classic films and sandwiched them together, because they didn't watch those movies.
Yeah, I would love to know behind the scenes how we get Joker. Like, does that start from one of the announced Joker movies? Like, to go back to what you were talking about.
I don't know.
Like, how does that start?
Because Birds of Prey clearly does, from one of the Harley Quinn announcements. When does that movie come out? Is that
2019.
Is that 19? Okay.
No, 2020, because it's right at the beginning. It's like that movie comes out and then...
Oh, because that was like a February or March like movie of death movie,
I don't know why I
wasn't
said
it?
2019.
Yeah.
But no, Joker's a weird movie. I know a lot of people have respect for it for being like a movie. That movie is like a skin crawler, or not skin crawler. That's from Kong Skull Island. A skinwalker, where those are creatures that like take your skin and you see them as like a person that you recognize, but there's something slightly off about them. That's what Joker is as a movie. Like it is like two movies that you've seen, and that they're just kind of slightly off. And it's saying something slightly different, but I don't think it's especially interesting.
Yeah,
it's funny.
unless you haven't seen those movies and you're just starved for anything that's not the exact superhero formula that you've seen 1,000 times. And I think that's a lot of why that. And also, it's rated R and it feels like a movie for adults. And we're in, and again, now I'm talking present day because we're not out of this. We're really liking period pieces right now. And we're really liking just a few decades ago period pieces before you have technology that makes things too easy for your protagonist.
Yeah, well, and I had a thing with that. Or I guess I'll start with this instead. With the trailer of that movie, I was like, oh, that looks like Oscar bait, the superhero movie. And then I watched it and I was like, that's kind of exactly what I expected this movie to be. But I had a thing recently where it was like, okay, we've had like a decade or whatever of best actor picks. Like, it was like a list of them from the 2010s, and it was like, okay, how do you guys feel about the 2010s best actor picks for the Oscars? And I laughed really hard because I was like, oh, like this is like a fake list. Like they put all the real ones, and then you get to the end, and it's Joaquin Phoenix as Joker. Like that's really funny. And then I looked it up and found out that was real.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, no, that actually happened. I guess it was a very weak year. I don't know what else was nominated, but I don't know that he deserved that win.
It's also...
He's fine.
Did he actually win it?
No, he won it. He won Best Actor for Joker.
And I must have known that at that time, but I've forgotten it. Wow.
That must have been what I had, too, because I was like, that's not real.
How much of that is, like, just precedent of an actor even posthumously won for that role before, so now that's like an important role in a movie that people are heralding as important?
When Joaquin Phoenix is one of those big actors...
I'm hesitating because I have no idea if that has anything to do with it, but I can't help but wonder, does that happen if Ledger hasn't already won it?
It's probably a mix of that and...
I don't know if it is, but...
And Joaquin Phoenix just being like one of those big actors that... is like very heralded in everything they do.
How many has he won?
I was going to ask that because I'm like, is it the thing that...
If that was his first win, it might have been, wow, he's got to finally win one for something.
That's what I thought too. And Dan Stan said something similar in the comments. So I'm now wondering...
Maybe it's that.
Yeah, maybe it's that.
And now anybody that plays that role outside of Suicide Squad...
Yeah, Jared Leto's not winning an Oscar.
Is going to be like, oh, maybe I can win because it's Joker. People win Oscars for this guy. Also, that's a question.
Mm-hmm.
Did that make... Now we're just talking about the Oscars and who really cares, but did that make history? Like, is there another role that more than one actor has won for?
Oh, good question.
I would just have to look that up. I don't know.
I don't know enough about their wins to know that offhand. But possibly. Maybe?
I mean, I imagine so because, franchises don't tend to win Oscars. Or at least they didn't used to. And so, the only way it would happen before is if you had a remake that was... regarded as well as the original, and they both won an Oscar for something.
It would be like if Brian Cox won a Best Supporting Actor for Hannibal Lecter and Manhunter.
Yeah.
Something like that before like a franchise thing.
That's exactly right.
Danston says Vito Corleone in The Godfather. Yeah, no, I guess that makes sense. Because you have it with Brando and then I think De Niro in part 2.
Oh, okay. There's a loophole where it's two actors playing the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. We have a prequel
I've
thing,
never actually
prequel
watched
sequel.
those, so I would not have thought of that. I need to finally do that. That's a blind spot for me. And you said you find those boring, so
Well, so they're really well-made movies. I have what I imagine people who really don't like fantasy have with Lord of the Rings, where like I'm
okay.
really not a mob movie guy. So when I watch it, I'm like I get it. Like the filmmaking's really good, but I don't care about the subject matter, and it's like very like deep into that. So it's my eyes glaze over, and then I
Okay,
get
so
bored.
I don't mean to psychoanalyze you,
Yeah.
but I'm surprised to hear you say you're not into mobster stuff because that seems uh in your wheelhouse to me with other things I know you like. Like, how do you like Punisher Max, but you're not into mobster stuff?
Because Punisher Max is not a mobster thing. It's just a guy murdering criminals. It's not following them.
It cuts to them a lot, though. I mean, like I haven't read that whole
It
run,
does.
and I've
Yeah.
been asked to review a few arcs, and the arcs that I've probably done 4 or 5 now. The arcs I've read seem to constantly be going back to the mob. Part of the reason I haven't been as into those is because I too am not a big like
But with that, it's
organized
almost like
crime
a
guy.
slasher thing, right? Like it's not, oh, here are these characters I'm following. It's like, oh, these are the people the Punisher's gonna kill. He's gonna get them.
But it gets wrapped up enough. We're off the rails now. It gets wrapped up enough in the politics of it that while I'm reading it, I feel like I'm reading organized crime fiction.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't know. We're all a bunch of walking balls of hypocrisy. So
Well, and I'm not saying you shouldn't like that stuff. I was just wondering about it because I had it in my head that you were like into that kind of fiction.
yeah, not really. Like there's obviously stuff that's good, and even though like I have a hard time sitting through The Godfather, like it's very well made. Like I'm not saying that they're bad movies.
Oh, sure.
Um, but like I've sat through different Scorsese gangster movies or like Scarface, stuff like that. Like they're not movies I would go to on my own, but like a lot of them are well made.
James Egan wants to know if you like The Sopranos.
That was my mom's favorite show when I was a kid, and I would watch it here and there, and I thought it was really good, but I've never watched it all the way through. And then about a year ago, I was like, "Hey, Mom, can I borrow all your Sopranos DVDs? I'm finally gonna go through the show." And I made it through 6 episodes, and then I forgot to go back to it. But it was really good. That show is great.
Anyway, that's just an aside. I was curious about
She
that.
keeps
Well,
complaining at me. She's like, "I want to rewatch them, watch them," and I'm like, "Just take them." Like at this point, and she's like, "No, you have to watch them."
we are past the hour now. The only uh, the only movie I can think of that we didn't really talk about is Glass, but like, who cares?
Yeah, and I haven't seen any of those movies, so I don't
Okay,
really know
sure.
how much they. One of the ones we did kind of just skip over, though, if you want to throw it out quick, is Incredibles 2 happens in this period.
Yes, which was disappointing for most of us.
Yes, that movie's not great,
Well, you waited too long for it to happen,
and then it was
and
too much of the same movie.
yeah, and it needs to be. I don't know if you've got to wait that long with a movie that is, that beloved and spoke to people the way it did. It kind of has to live up to that, or it has to be just so different and
But I
so
think a big
entertaining.
thing too is
And
they lost
it
a
was
year.
throwaway. It was really easy to forget about right after you saw it.
I think a big thing is they lost a year in development because it was supposed to be Toy Story 4 and then Incredibles 2. And then at some point they switch, and Incredibles 2 came out a year earlier, and Toy Story 4 comes out a year later. And I think that probably has something to do with it. I don't like either of those movies, so curse you, Pixar.
James Egan mentioned Spider-Verse. I forgot that was 19.
Oh yeah, and I can't watch that. So you throw out what you have to say about that. But it inspired like a ton of animated stuff at this point.
Yeah, it has turned out to be one of the most influential things that's happened in the last decade, superhero movie wise,
And animation wise, like
and
both.
just animation wise. Yeah, I think, and that also won an Oscar. I think the most
People were
important
mad that
thing.
the second one didn't.
Yeah. Well, and it was kind of a slow year for animation. So like with 19, it didn't really go up against a lot.
Well, lost to The Boy and the Heron, which probably deserved it over that.
Oh,
But
you mean the new one?
oh, sorry, were you talking about the first one? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying the
Yeah.
first one in 19, it wasn't going up against a lot, so there was probably
100%.
more competition this time around.
Yeah, exactly. Because 2018, you would have had like Incredibles 2 was probably nominated. Disney's had like a really like wonky like last like 10 years. Like they've just kind of been mediocre. So like whatever they had that year probably got nominated.
Yeah, and you've really only got like 3 studios competing most of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not enough animation happening in the first place, and we need more of it so that we're not just seeing freaking Minions movies all the time.
Yeah, one, it's you want to get to a place where Disney isn't nominated out of obligation.
Oh, Spider-Verse was 18, okay.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
I always forget that was a December movie. Thanks, Robert. Like I said, it all blends together the closer we get to
I also
now.
thought that was earlier in the year. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might not have seen it until January. I'm not sure.
And we didn't really talk about Venom, but Venom exists, and it led to a whole bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, that was influential in a totally different way. In that, but not on anybody but Sony.
Yeah,
and that was Sony going.
Taking cues from that. Maybe Bloodshot. Maybe that happens because of Venom.
Maybe so. That's hilarious. I'm glad you said that. But no, Sony looks at Venom and it makes $1 billion, and they're like, "Well, we don't really know why this was as successful as it was, but let's just do more of that." And we'll just keep making movies the way we might have made them in 2004.
Yeah, well, it's weird because that makes, what, like 800 million, and then Venom 2 is like 500 million, and then the other two they did bombed. So, like,
yeah.
Like, we're seeing them get, like, edged out of this stuff, right? Hopefully. Venom The Last Dance is the last one. Please.
Yeah, I hope you're right about that, but I don't trust them at all.
No, I don't either.
Because Sony is fighting, and this is surprising with Hollywood or any big business. Sony cannot decide if they care more about their ego or making money. Mm-hmm. And they need to play in the same space Marvel is playing so badly. There's a part of me that doesn't know if they mind losing money on it. Mm-hmm. Because they clearly don't like that the MCU is the reason that Spider-Man was successful again. Like, they don't like that. Mm-hmm. And but then, like, the Spider-Verse keeps making, like, top 10 superhero movie lists of all time. And they've done really well at the box office. And it's very ironic to me that they're putting out these really bad live-action Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man, while simultaneously they're schooling, and I realize it's different departments, but it's the same company, they are schooling Marvel on how to do multiverse. Mm-hmm. While the multiverse idea is taking their whole line. And they were Hollywood for like 7 years. Mm-hmm. Like, that whole thing is really bizarre and crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Hire Lord Miller, I guess, Marvel.
Yeah. Well, some of it does end up being just the talent that you hire and getting out of their way, of course. Because I'm convinced that, it's the animation, who cares, let them do whatever they're going to do. And then it comes out and it's heralded as a masterpiece. And like, hey, I guess you guys can just go do more of that. And what it taught me was, and I've said this before, so I won't talk too much about Spider-Verse, but Austin was like, Austin just physically can't watch those movies without getting sick.
Yeah, they mess up my eyes.
So all I'll say is, and I'm a broken record on this, that taught me that I don't need superhero movies to be in live action. I had to keep reminding myself while I was watching that I was looking at an animated thing, as stylized as it is, and as comic booky as it is. And there are places where it gets maybe a little bit more cartoony just in its storytelling than maybe I want it to be. The second movie doesn't have that at all, and I think the second one's a better movie. Or at least I enjoyed it more. I'm also partial to it because they did 2 of my favorite Spider-Man things in the same movie. I got The Spot and I got 2099. It was glorious. It was a glorious 1-2 punch. But I went, you can do all of the really cool, weird, Silver Age Spider or comic book stuff that I wanted from Doctor Strange and that I wanted from Infinity War and Endgame. and you could do it animated and still aim it at an American audience. And it just felt like it was learning the right lessons from Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, for sure.
that got me very excited. And I think it has been a really positive thing, to your point, for the animation industry, in that, yeah, you're maybe seeing some knockoffs. Like, I didn't like, and people did, I didn't care for Mutant Mayhem, and it felt a little bit knockoffy for that art style, but it was doing some, cool creative stuff here and there too. I just think that the risk you run is everybody trying to look like Spider-Verse, but if people learn the right lessons from it, and we're not far enough away from it because it takes so long to make these movies, but if you learn the right lessons from it, we end up making more sophisticated either movies for all audiences, or finally some actually adult movies that don't have to be for kids but are still animated. And this country is still, for whatever reason, weird about animation, and that is helping us get farther away from that, which is great.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's an important movie, even if I don't think it's like as great as the top 10 list of all time people have. I put it on my top 10 for the decade, but I'm not gonna go all time.
Yeah, definitely. No, and with Gunn saying that they want to do animated movies, it makes me hopeful that we'll see some more of that.
Yeah, good call. And I imagine that he'll, like, I don't want to say mandate, but like he'll try to get a staff to go farther and make those movies not just for kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And get a little bit more experimental with them. I like the way Dan Schneider puts this. He says superhero movies are mostly animated anyway.
Yeah. No, weirdly, Ralph Bakshi's like the most influential man in all of Hollywood with his evolution of rotoscoping, because every movie is just rotoscoped in 3D now.
Yeah. Well, because for CG, that's what mocap is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Every movie is made like his animated Lord of the Rings.
One thing I don't understand, this will be my last point about this because we're well over time. We're cheating again.
That's okay. We talked about a lot of like hypothetical stuff at the beginning.
That's true. I can't help it.
That's okay.
That's more fun for me than here's a list of movies we're trying to remember what year was it December or January? So this is so interesting for everybody that can just pull it up on their phones. The other thing I wanted to say real quick about Spider-Verse is it is perplexing to me. I started to make this point earlier that Sony, and I'm glad they didn't oversaturate it like it looked like they were going to, but they haven't done anything. That they have not done the shared universe thing with Spider-Verse.
The spin-off stuff, because they announced it at the beginning, didn't they?
They announced it immediately. Like, they had it in their back pocket. If this makes any money at all, like if anybody goes and sees it, we're going to put out this slate of here's all these things we're doing. And we've heard not word one about any of that stuff since then that I have heard.
We have one spin-off coming, and it's live action.
Oh, that's right. Was that the Silk thing?
No, because they scrapped that and now they're doing Noir, and they're trying to get Nick Cage back for it.
But they said that it wasn't going to be related.
I don't know. Who knows?
Who knows? But that's what I read anyway, was that it was supposed to be, well, we're making that because he was popular in that, but it's not actually going to be those movies.
But then I think they scrapped all their writer's room for it, so...
Oh, well, then anything can happen, yeah.
Anything can happen, yeah.
But that's what they should be doing. As much as I don't want to see them oversaturate it and get quality over quantity with it, or get quantity over quality with it, like Disney Plus did with a lot of MCU stuff. Their live action movies without Spider-Man have been a giant waste of time and bafflingly hilarious at their best. Mm-hmm. The lesson they should have learned from Spider-Verse is we don't need live action. Like, if you had to do it all over again, when you look at the way Green Lantern was made in 2011, where so much of the space stuff is a floating Ryan Reynolds head on top of a CG body, well, you make that movie in animation.
Mm-hmm.
And then you spin. I'm saying this retroactively after seeing after Spider-Verse made me forget I wasn't looking at live action. And then you spin out a shared universe from that, and you just make movies that are for adults but happen to be animated, and you can put anything you want on screen. And then you don't have to go, well, we better not do Red Lanterns because we're not going to be able to make the flying CG cat look very good. Well, it's animated. You can do that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. No, the flying CGI cat thing is definitely coming now.
There's no way it's not. And I'm not saying that
way
James
it's
Gunn
not.
should have gone just animation. Like, hopefully they do great with live action. But there's a part of me that wonders why we even need human beings anymore.
I mean, I wonder that on a daily basis, but not about movies. But
and I don't mean that in like an AI kind of way where we should just reply. I'm just saying, I don't know, draw it all. It's comic books.
mhm. Yeah, give me a really good animated Doctor Strange, where you have like that Ditko aesthetic.
Yeah, put some real money behind it. Allow them to be longer than 75 minutes. Because the DC animated movies, which we haven't talked a lot about in this series, we've talked majoritively about theatrically released stuff, but those movies have had the monopoly on that art form for all this time for superhero movies, and they just haven't had the resources to do it real well most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And a few of them have been great and would have been worth releasing in the theater.
And it's part of why they don't really have like a major impact on just superhero movies as a whole.
No, I feel like I'm in a secret club whenever I talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
And even the popular ones. Because there's a lot of people outside of our circles that haven't even seen Dark Knight Returns. I have no idea what you'd be talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the wonky thing with it is there's like maybe 5 really good ones, and you bring them up to people and nobody knows because they're weird straight to DVD animated movies that nobody cares about.
Yeah, 5 good ones, and there's more, and like there's some okay ones, but they're not necessarily worth like showing to people. They're not all bad, but like there's 5 good ones, and there's significantly more of those than even like the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least that many. I don't know. Or are there 33, 34 of those? There probably are. We've been making them since 2007.
Yeah, I want to say there's more than that.
I would think so. I was second guessing it because I don't actually know the number, but it's got to be at least 35 or 40.
I gotta think it's like close to 50, but I don't know.
Especially if you break up the 2-part ones, because with just 2-part movies, you've already got 6, and that's before Crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Which has started, and I've heard nothing but bad things about, but I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah,
because we're not caught up on those. And we did a video talking about a couple of those we hadn't talked about yet, and nobody cared.
Yeah, so, nobody cared. We didn't even really care. I'm pretty sure both of those were like.
We had a hard time making a case for that video in that video.
Yeah. Exactly.
Nicholas Bodo, Under the Red Hood, is on the level of top 4 comic book films. I don't know, like, of all time, but it's great. I mean, I would have to sit down and look at my list of favorite movies and see how close to even the top 10 it gets. But like maybe 20, maybe certainly 30. I would go as far as to say I bet I put that on at least a top 30.
Yeah,
I think
it would probably make my top 5. Batman movies? Question mark?
Probably though. Probably though.
It might make my top 50 overall comic book movies. I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
Let me read this super chat real quick, and then we'll go ahead and end off here. Dan Schneider, $5 super chat. The novelty of live action is gone. This is a great point. It used to be you're doing this fantasy thing and making it real. Nobody gets that feeling anymore. Make it animated. He's so right about that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't understand why YouTube says this is his first super on a live stream, because he's given us lots of super chats.
Oh,
and
weird.
And I thank him for that, but that's very strange.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe he made a new account with the same name somehow. I don't know.
Maybe they took down his last one.
Yeah, so no, I'm not going to play the song, Scott Simmons. I also don't have that up because this isn't that show. But
all part of that Dan Schneider documentary.
Don't you agree with that, though? That's a really great point.
Yeah, definitely.
Is that like the movies don't even care to make it look integrated enough anymore.
Mm-hmm. No, and it's weird because like you look at the last several that have been made, and so many of them have like awful CGI issues. But then
And
you
you
have
just mean superhero movies in general, right? You're not even poking at a
yeah,
line, are
yeah,
you? Like DC,
yeah,
Marvel, whatever it is.
no, both of them because it's like okay, of the last few years, like which ones look the best? Like you have the Batman, which is not like crazy out there. Like
And it's also mostly practical.
mhm.
How much CG is even in that movie?
I'd imagine quite a bit still.
You think?
Yeah,
Boy, I'd love to read up on that because I
more than
couldn't.
you'd probably think.
I wonder about it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a thing that blew my mind not that long ago where like in the Batmobile chase the rain is all CGI. And
Wow, that's cool.
I want
But
to say
see,
his cape in that scene is
but see,
CGI.
we should expect that from the guy that made us believe in CG apes is really being there. Like,
Exactly. He doesn't have the Nolan
if
thing where it's like we got to do it all practical.
no, but if he's gonna make a Batman movie, he's gonna do stuff you can only do in a computer, but you're never gonna know it. You're right. That's so cool.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And now I'm
That's
realizing I should have been even
does
more
the volume
excited
well.
than I was about him making that movie.
Hmm.
But anyway, I'm sorry. What did you say? I missed it.
I said that's also like the only movie that's made the volume look good. That's that thing that they made for the Mandalorian, where instead of
Oh,
green screen, you have like the actual CGI backdrop that's like animated on set. That's how they do the sky backdrop. And,
you know, I keep hearing people talk about that, and I still did not fully understand what it was. So is it sort of like so like the actors can
it's
actually
basically like
see
rear
it there?
projection, but you're
That's
like
what I was gonna say. Rear projection.
it's like rear projection, but you've animated it in CGI basically already, and it's like playing behind them. Is basically what it is.
And in theory, it's a good idea because it at least lets the actors see what's supposed to be there,
Hmm.
and they have something to play off of.
Yeah, the issue is it's very limited on how you can use it. Like Guns talked about how he doesn't use it because you can't move the camera with it.
Yeah.
Uh, like that's one of the biggest issues with it.
And then if you have a scene where it would seem a lot more natural to move the camera, it'll be really obvious what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of those things where I mean, like everything, it's a tool, right? So
Yeah.
you just got to learn how to use the tool.
So what scene did he use it in?
It's the big Gotham sky drop when they're in the construction building. The Batman and Gordon keep meeting at.
Oh, cool.
I'm sure they probably use it in other places, but like that's the big one that I know.
Yeah, you know,
It's there.
I don't look at special features anymore right after movies come out. Like I just don't think to because I'm busy with so much stuff. So I don't look at them until we're doing like a rewind commentary.
Yeah, definitely.
And I wish I had now.
Yeah. But yeah, that movie looks really great. Guardians 3 looks really great.
Yeah.
And then in terms of superhero movies, like outside of those two in the last like few years, nothing's really coming to me that I've seen where I'm like, this is really great effects that all are all integrated really well. There's stuff outside of superhero movies, obviously. Like we
Yeah,
were bringing
like
up Godzilla and Dune Part 2, but in the superhero genre, nothing's really coming to me.
yeah, because I mean I liked Doctor Strange 2 a lot, but the effects were about what they've been. I think. I mean maybe.
Yeah, that movie has some wonky effects in places. And then other parts that look really good, but like there's definitely parts where you can tell that the actors aren't actually on camera together, and they just filmed an actor on a green screen.
Nicholas Bodo says the Suicide Squad looks great too. Yeah, I mean just
Yep.
that's
I wasn't thinking about that far.
that's
but
how
yeah.
Gunn makes movies. But yeah, just I think Austin's just saying the last like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, but yeah, even going that far back, like yeah, you have the Suicide Squad. Birds of Prey, I guess, doesn't really have a lot of CGI issues, but I've only seen it once, so maybe it does, and I just don't remember.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna start complaining about your effects when I can't even stand your story or.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the least of that movie's problems.
Exactly.
If it even has that, I would never notice it because I'm having a hard time looking at it for other reasons.
Which is a good thing that you're never reminded by it, like from a certain cup or anything.
Oh, Austin, just wait till we have to do the commentary on that, man.
Oh man.
Oh,
I will maybe finally decide whether I dislike that or Suicide Squad 2016 more, because I can't decide. I'm like, I don't know which of these I dislike more.
I can. That's very easy for me, but
Mhm.
some of that is just vested interest in characters and things. Like,
Yeah, no, exactly, and I think that's part of it is that it's ruining a lot of Ostrander stuff I like in Suicide Squad. While I don't have as much of an attachment to Birds of Prey,
yeah,
but then Birds of Prey is also trying to be like a movie that's edited badly by the studio. Like I don't know,
yeah,
it's a mess.
yeah.
The movie
You
sucks.
can't do that to Cassandra Cain, and that's not even the worst thing in that movie. But it's probably the thing that pissed me off the most.
Hmm. The only thing in that movie that will ever stick with me is that Harley Quinn gets way too horny about an egg sandwich, and I had to watch it. And I don't like that. I don't like that I was forced to see that.
You were really uncomfortable with that, yeah.
I was, yeah. I needed an adult in the room.
That's one of those movies where every 5 minutes I'm just going, "Who thought this was a good idea?" Like, how aren't we all uncomfortable right now?
Mhm. It's a part where you go, or it's a movie where you go, oh man, Algae Rhythm, the villain from Space Jam 2, that's an AI that's like that movie, is real, isn't it? That wasn't made up for that movie.
You know, there's a lot of things that I would rather watch than Birds of Prey, and I think Space Jam 2 is one of them.
I don't know if I could go that far, but
I can.
I really hated Space Jam 2. But
I can. If it meant I didn't have to watch it for a rewind, I'd go watch that right now.
I did have a really great first viewing of it though with friends. I shouldn't say first; I've only seen it once.
I thought you were saying I shouldn't say friends. I don't actually know these people.
Yeah, no, I don't know these people. But no, we laughed for like 10 minutes straight at the end when Bugs Bunny sacrifices his life.
Ugh.
It's really funny. It's so bad.
Yeah, there's a lot of baffling in that movie too. That whole 10-minute like superhero like Batman sequence. I don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, and then like that whole scene where they edit the Looney Tunes into different movies.
Oh, I forgot about that.
That was a big moment where every single person in the call I was in had like a big like, are you effing kidding me about something, and it was all something different.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was legendary.
Okay, we're way off the rails. We're way past time. Let's close out and say thanks a lot for watching, folks. We sure appreciate it. Thanks for watching if you're with us right now, and also later on after the fact. We did sort of kind of get through 19, so we should be able to do one more show, and then maybe an Apple Eye after that. If we think we have enough to say about the future, Austin, I feel like we've sprinkled so much of that in.
Yeah, well, we've done so many speculation casts, and yeah, we've exactly like kind of peppered that stuff in. We could end up. This could be the Infinity War and Endgame thing, where it's the big 10-year anniversary, but it ends on the 11th year. We got it in 10 parts, but really 11.
See, that's a lot of the reason I want to do the epilogue is just because 12 is a nicer number.
11 is perfectly balanced, though. It's 1-1.
Oh, that's true.
Exactly.
That's true. It should be considered an even number because of that.
It should be considered a perfect number, really.
Hey, if you'd like to become a Patreon producer, support the show on Patreon, the $10 tier lets you help us pick things for review and chat with me and Austin sometimes on Discord. Lots of cool perks. We also read your name out at the end of every episode. And I'm going to do that right now. Thanks to all of our patrons, but especially our producers, including David Crabtree, Jeff Niederhofer, Jesse Surtees, Chewbacca's Lover, Dr. Hello, Goofster123, Hot Soup, Joe Turner, Jajira, John Matthew McLean, Matt Bat68, Michael Martin, Stone Gasman, Super Billy, Thomas Edgehill, Adam March, Damon Begay, Jacob Schneider, John Sandoval, Jonathan Campbell, Kareem Roberts, Matthew Brody, Michael Austin Gulick, The Day Ghost. That's this guy.
I was going to say, weird, I didn't come up. Did something happen?
I don't know why he's on this list still. Thanks, Austin. Unknown Passenger and Wendell Jones. That's everybody right now. Go check out Patreon and lots of perks and different at different tiers. $30 tier right now, you can pick a commentary for the next Superhero Rewind commentary project. We don't have any takers on that, so you'll get it pretty quickly if you choose to do that. The next Rewind commentary is going to be on Friday this week. Dates this video, but we're doing Days of Future Past, and we're doing a poll right now for the next show after that. So if you want to get in on that, you've only got to be at the $5 tier. Is it $5 tier for that? I always forget where I've got that. No, I think that's all $10, and then $5 tier is for the tweet length reviews. That's what it is.
Oh, okay, yeah, that one's sweeping so far.
Yeah, which is shocking. That is not what I thought would happen.
Yeah,
Austin, I did not put that movie in to get it. So I didn't think anybody would care.
No, and the one that I was like, oh, I hope this wins. I'm the only one who voted for it.
And I think nobody knows what we're talking about right now. We'll reveal it on Friday. But I think the movie I picked is actually the worst performing movie of all four of those.
It is, I think, yeah.
Like at the box office.
Yep.
But more of our crowd wants it.
Yeah.
Anyway. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. We sure appreciate it. Austin, thanks for going through the gauntlet with me on this.
I am, yeah. I don't know why, but like the last 20 minutes, I'm like, oh, man.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'll let you go to bed.
No, it's okay. It just like all of a sudden hit me. I'm like, oh, it's late.
I didn't mean to get heated about the Thanos thing. I just had like PTSD from that period.
No. I moved us off of that more so because I'm like, oh man, we're gonna end up wasting our time on Thanos. We're not gonna finish our time. We gotta soldier through.
I thought you were upset with me. I wasn't actually angry. I was just like, oh god, this thing again.
No, I was like, oh man,
I'm so tired of talking about this.
It's like we're gonna get stuck on this. We're not gonna finish 2019. I gotta get us back on track.
Thanks for getting us on track. No, I see red when we talk about MCU Thanos. I'm like, oh my god, that guy.
It's like me with Watchmen, the HBO show.
Oh yeah. Well, that's not fair because both of those movies are, I don't know. I like better than you like. Watch. I don't know what I'm talking about. Because I like that Watchmen show, okay, but you really hate that.
I like really hate that show, yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is I like Thanos in those movies a lot more than you hate HBO Watchmen, even though I don't really love what they did with Thanos. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. No, absolutely.
There's no way I'm as mad about that.
No, I mean, you know, it's absolutely fair to not be happy with what they did with him.
Anyway, we'll talk about that eventually.
Yeah, we're about to fully get into it again.
No, we're not. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you again real soon. I was Captain Logan. This is Austin, the Day Ghost.
Bye, everybody.
See you, folks.